Lee, I'm not advocating anything here, but how is this not a thing? We're all so worked up about Clementine that we're forgetting what the fuck happened to you.
Your arm's gone. Why? That's so scary.
Clementine, honey. My arm is gone because I cut it off.
Why would you do that?
Lee, where do you come down on staying or going?
You mean packing up the motel and getting in the RV?
Yeah, we've been talking about it, but you made up your mind yet?
If episode 1 was the beginning of the nightmare and episode 2 showed us the most depraved abyss, then episode 3 is where everything really falls apart. The signs of civilization's last stand are still around. One of the most glaring is the chopper that's crashed into the pharmacy's roof. You can't help but wonder how hopeless it must be everywhere else. Kenny and Lee begin the episode on yet another supply run. All that food and medicine from the car? Gone. Now the group is forced to rely on whatever scraps are left in the city, and as the two are discussing the possibility of leaving the motel behind, they're interrupted by a horrifying scream. A woman runs out to the middle of the streets, practically dead on her feet as she's bitten multiple times by walkers. We're then met with the first choice of the episode, end her suffering with a bullet or let her be human bait.
Fuck, gotta shoot her. Put her out of this misery.
I don't know we're here.
What do you mean?
I mean, we leave her alive, and she draws them all to her, buying us time. Yeah, think about it. We're always worrying about the ones we can't see. She stays alive and brings them all out of their holes.
It's kind of heartbreaking how, in the last episode, we opened up trying to save a teacher's life. Now we're just deciding how this woman dies. The question is no longer about helping others, but whether or not you're willing to take advantage of their suffering. Knowing that the group's survival depends on how smoothly this run goes, I decide not to intervene. Lee has to make the harsh decisions whether or not he'd like to. Kenny and Lee then make their way into the pharmacy, taking everything that they can as the woman's screams echo behind them. Although they manage to clean the place out, the walkers eventually notice them and they're forced to make an escape, nearly losing their lives in the process. The rest of the episode is filled with the entire group making similar choices. When people get past their denial and get over their anger, they start getting into bargaining. Bargaining is one of the lesser understood aspects of grief. It's not just the literal process of making deals or bargains, it's the hope that if you sacrifice just the right thing, you can save some part of what you lost. When people lose something, they end up desperate to find some way to undo it. They start negotiating with themselves, others, or even a higher being. This is usually done to try and regain some sense of control. This desperation is what fuels bad decision after bad decision, eventually ending up far worse than where they started. But, at the same time, it's an important part of the healing process. Once you've exhausted all of the hypotheticals in your head, it becomes much easier to recognize that what you've lost is gone, and now you just need to move forward in life without it. I'm going to highlight these moments for the characters as they come, but for now, let's return to the story. We return to the motel where the fallout from the last episode is still thick in the air. While Lily is initially happy with our haul, things immediately turn caustic as Kenny brings up the tenuous safety of the motel. And yes, I agree that he's being an ass, but let's be honest, is he wrong? The group only managed to stock up because we made the brutal choice with a dying woman. It's not like we can keep hoping a random straggler keeps showing up that we can sacrifice every single time. However, none of what he's saying is going through to Lily as she's still deeply affected by Larry's death. Now she clings to the motel much in the same way she clung to her father despite his harmful tendencies. On the surface, it looks like she's staying because of how defensible the motel is, but honestly, I think a part of her blames herself for what happened to Larry. If only she'd been more aggressive about turning the St. John's away, her father might still be here and everything could have been just fine. Regardless of how she feels, grief just has a way of boiling over.
It's not going to be easier out on the road!
How would you know?
What I know? I know you're not above murder. I know somebody has been stealing our supplies. That's right, stealing! And I know the list of people I can trust here gets smaller every day! Now everybody get out!
Alright, fine, not like I wanted to be there anyway. Carly then takes Lee aside, and it's obvious that over the course of the time skip, the two have gotten sweet on each other.
What I wanted to say was, I've been thinking a lot about you.
I think about you too.
Our group is small.
You're small.
I really do love how much of a dork Lee is, but that's not really why Carly pulled us over. She wants Lee to come clean to the others about why he got arrested. Larry knowing about it implies that Lily probably knows about it too, and it would probably be better if they heard it from Lee rather than anyone else. Despite Lee's hesitation, I agree with her on this. The second thing that she wants to discuss is the possibility of a thief. Despite her paranoia, Lily isn't really the type to cry wolf for no reason, so there must be something up here. Agreeing to look into things, the two then part ways. Lee goes about telling everyone about his past, and it actually goes pretty smoothly. Everything that he's done for the group leads them to believe that he wouldn't do it because he was a bad guy. There are a few bumps here and there.
It wasn't for touching kids, was it?
Oh, man, come on, man.
What? I gotta ask.
No. I killed a guy in a fight.
No, that wasn't it. I just thought that was funny. What I actually mean is Katja. She doesn't judge Lee for what happened, not at all. However, she does ask what happened with Larry, and the truth horrifies her.
I held Lily back, and Kenny made sure Larry didn't get up.
What did he do?
He smashed his head in.
Out of everybody in the group, Katja has really been the least suited to adapting to the new world. Not for lack of trying, mind you, but she can't even get comfortable around the fact that people need to carry guns. In any other circumstance, I would find that understandable, but there's just far too many dangers lurking around to be unarmed. It's this rejection of the way things are that's going to come to a head later, but right now, we need to follow up on Lily. Asking her about the missing supplies, she explains that what they have on hand isn't consistent with their tally. Somebody's been skimming from the top, and the frequency of it is only going to make her more and more paranoid by the day. I do find it absolutely fascinating that she still believes Lee is innocent even when he's got a direct hand in killing her father. That clarity is both admirable and tragic in light of what happens soon. Lily then hands us her only piece of physical evidence, a broken flashlight.
I found this tossed into the garbage. We don't toss out equipment, we fix it. You'd only try to get rid of a flashlight if you were using it when you shouldn't.
With that, she asks us to find out who's the thief, and we begin our investigation.
A mystery.
Jesus, Doc.
I'm sorry. I heard you guys talking.
You need to unhear all of that.
Can I help?
What did I just say?
You're the Grace Detective, and I can be Dick Grayson, your ward. That's Robin.
I know who it is.
Now I know what you might be thinking. Dr.Bodyshot! You're the child with the hat, by the way.
How do I support you as the most funny, most muscled, and most charming YouTuber on the platform?
I'm glad you asked, beloved viewer. A simple like and subscribe does wonders to help the channel out. I hope you stay hydrated and enjoy the rest of the video. Sure enough, we find all the clues we need with Duck's help. And you know I'm giving him the high five. Come on. We then follow said clues, which leads us to a nearby grate. Inside, we find a paper bag full of medicine. Lily was right. Somebody has been taking from the supplies. We head back inside and show her our findings. But before we can bring the information to the others, we're interrupted by a commotion outside.
What the hell?
You don't fucking steal from us! Who the fuck is that?
Yo,
Got our people out there.
Out here. We ain't fucking around.
What do we do?
Lily then sneaks out back while Lee goes out to keep them busy. We barely get a word in though before Lily takes the first shot and BAM! He ain't showing up in Rush Hour 3. A firefight breaks out as everyone scrambles to get into the RV. All the while, Lee's putting in some work shooting most of the bandits and the walkers. Everyone eventually makes it inside and they're all forced to abandon the motel. Everything that they gathered, everything that they worked for, it's all gone. Lily starts pressing the theft since it directly led to everything falling apart. She starts pointing fingers at everyone, causing Carly to snap back at her, which causes even more tension. Before too much headway can be made, Kenny hits a walker which gets stuck under the wheels, forcing the RV to the side of the road. Still heated, Carly and Lily go back at each other's throats. The conflict continues to rise until...
Now, what the fuck's the problem?
After everything that she survived, everything that she's been through, this is what gets Carly killed. Even after all these years, this moment still gives me chills. It's honestly pretty tragic how Lily ended up as a much worse version of Larry. At the beginning, she was actually a lot more cooperative and kind, and it was pretty obvious that she was well aware that her father's temper was a problem. But by episode 2, it seemed like she saw his behavior as a model to replicate. That's just the kind of thing that happens to a lot of people when their lives become unpredictable and, let's face it, scary. They try to find something that feels steady and safe. Oftentimes, they end up attaching themselves to a mentor figure whether they're actually a good one or not. Usually it's a parent, sometimes it's a teacher, and sadly it can even be a social media influencer.
If someone goes at my friend
100%.
or my brother or any of my loved ones, I will slap the fucking shit out of you.
In Lily's case, she ended up adopting Larry's fear and paranoia so much that she was willing to murder someone over it. And now we're faced with a choice. Abandon Lily here or keep her with us. And honestly, she's just far too dangerous to stay with the group. If she's willing to shoot Carly over this, over a hunch, who else is she going to kill? The risk is just far too big, and so I decide to leave her behind. As if things couldn't get any worse, Kenny and Katja call Lee over to show him something important. Duck's been bit. He's going to die and there's nothing anyone can really do about it. For all that Kenny's done to try and protect his family, killing Larry and even leaving Sean to die, he's still going to lose his son, and Katja? I can only imagine what's going through her head. We decide to leave them alone for now and inform Clementine of what's happened. The only thing we can really do for her is to comfort her as best we can.
I'm glad I have you.
Me too. I heard you outside my treehouse that day and thought about dropping a hammer on your head.
Did the game jump scares us with a nightmare sequence where Clementine's turned into a walker? Though it is pretty clear that this is just a game telling us that Lee is terrified that Clementine will meet the same fate as Duck. But then it's just one problem after another as the entire road gets blocked by a train. With Duck's condition worsening, we need to figure out how to clear the path ahead quick. Checking around the train does reveal some good news. Not only is the train headed to Savannah, which is both where the group was already headed and where Clementine's parents are, which is just a little convenient, but I'll let it slide, they deserve something nice. The train also appears operational. Lee just needs to find the instructions and decouple the train from the boxcars. The former we achieve by using a pencil to uncover the impressions on a notepad, a trick that we actually learned from Clementine, and I love this. It shows that Lee is learning from Clementine just as much as Clementine is learning from him. It's great stuff, no notes here. Decoupling the boxcars just needs the use of a wrench, which we find in one of the compartments. Funny story of when I first played this game as a tiny little body shot. I assumed that the different wrenches had totally different stats and junk, so I kinda spent like maybe 10-20 minutes just picking up one wrench and the other, just seeing if they actually made a difference, and I kinda just had this habit of like hallucinating mechanics that may or may not have actually existed. I don't know if you guys ever did it yourselves, but like, I did it all the time. As we return to the others though, we find a man who's been living inside the train the whole time. This is Chuck, a homeless man who's been staying here ever since the apocalypse began. He's honestly a pretty legit guy despite how little time we get to know him, but his importance to the story will come later. For now, we inform the group that we're ready to get the train moving and they start filing inside. Before everyone gets on though, it becomes apparent that Duck's just not long for this world. But try as we might to tell Kenny about it, he just blows us off and gets the train started anyway. It's pretty clear that he just doesn't want to acknowledge a world without his son. And it's in trying to convince Kenny to stop the train that I find him the most compelling as a character. Specifically in the way that he both mirrors and contrasts Lily. When faced with the unknown, Lily would rather block out the entire world just so she can be safe from the danger, no matter if it means letting everyone else die. She was willing to let Lee and the others get eaten by walkers, she was hesitant to make a deal with the St. John's, and at the risk of repeating myself, she absolutely hated the idea of leaving the motel. She is truly at her worst when she's faced with uncertainty to the point where she just kills someone. Kenny, on the other hand, is so terrified of what's already in front of him that he would rather run away and gamble with the unknown. He even tries to convince himself that there must be a cure for Duck somewhere out there, or that his son is just miraculously immune to the bite. He rejects the awful truth so badly because he just so desperately wants to live in his impossible ideal. He is truly at his worst when he's faced with inevitability, to the point where he'd flee from every responsibility he has. When allowed to run freely, bargaining inevitably turns to this belief that you could have done something more, that what's happening is your fault, and that you could have stopped this from ever happening in the first place. But bluntly speaking, everyone's just going to face cruel and unfair tragedy someday. Trying to convince herself otherwise is just going to end up breaking us. And as Kenny is standing at the edge of a cliff, it is our duty to snap him out of it. Now, you could physically force him to confront reality, but I would rather speak to him as his friend. It's in this way that we really find out what's been haunting him. He believes what's happening to Duck is some kind of penance for his wrongdoings, that leaving Sean to die, it's finally caught up to him. A son for a son. But this is where Kenny truly diverges from Lily. Unlike the latter, you can still reach out to him and pull him out of the pit that he's dug himself into. It's ultimately that human connection, that kindness that he allows himself to have, that lets him understand self-loathing isn't going to help anyone. Not him, not Katja, and least of all Duck. And that's why he's one of my favorite characters in the game. For all of his flaws, his bullheadedness, his impulsivity, and being from Florida, he can still do the right thing. To me, it's not about never making mistakes or being a perfect person. It's what you do after those mishaps that really shape who you are as a person. Finally convinced of what needs to be done, Kenny stops the train. Kenny and Katja then disembark with Duck in tow and a gun in hand before heading into the forest. Now, I wish I could tell you that Duck being put down is the worst thing that happens. I do, but...
Look, Clem, things are... What the?
No!
Ben, take Clementine into the train. Go. It'll be fine.
Rushing into the forest to see what's happened, we find Katja dead on the ground. Instead of shooting Duck, she's decided to take herself out of the equation entirely. There have been a few signs that the only thing that really kept her going was making sure Duck was safe. The moment that slipped through her fingers, she already made her decision. Honestly, the scariest part is how it only really clicks in hindsight. Grief at its worst breaks people. It can turn them cruel to strangers, loved ones, and even themselves. That's why it's so important to allow yourself time to process it lest it consume you entirely. And if you do find yourself gripped by it, please try reaching out to somebody, anybody. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know how bad things are on your end, but I do know what it's like to stand at that edge myself. Things can get better, you just need to give yourself the chance to let it happen. But as tragic as things are, the world isn't going to go still. Duck's practically gone at this point and he's moments away from turning. Deciding to take the burden of easing his pain for Kenny, we take the gun ourselves. We give him one last look, take aim, and... We then climb back on the train to find Clementine crying. When we ask how she is, she reveals that Chuck told her she's going to die next. Now I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty willing to catch a body right then and there, but when we confront him, he hits us with the cold hard truth. As Clementine's guardian, we're just not doing enough to prepare her for the world. As angry as we could be, Chuck's got us dead to rights. I mean, what is our plan really? Arrive at Savannah teeming with God knows how many walkers, hope that there's a boat left for us to find, and go somewhere? We're flying by the seat of our pants enough as it is. The least we can do is make sure we can reduce as many variables as we can. Taking his advice, we go to Clementine to square things away. We start off by teaching her how to shoot a gun.
Bit to the right. Close. Now keep it steady.
I got it!
Excellent. Good shot.
We then get to trimming her hair down, which Lee does to the best of his ability.
Do you know how to do this?
Nope, no idea. I'm not much of a stylist, you know.
I'm going to look like a boy.
Finally, we start looking for a map of Savannah. Before we can, though, Ben interrupts us to say something pretty important.
It was me.
Huh?
I was the one giving the bandits supplies.
What?
It's all my fault.
What for? Why the hell would you do this?
They said they had my friend, that he was with them. By the time I realized they didn't, it was too late. They said they'd kill me. Kill all of us. I'm sorry, Lee.
I'm gonna drop a bit of a hot take here. The way Ben dealt with the bandits wasn't completely off base. Yes, the execution could have been done better, and he really should have told everybody what he was doing, but if he didn't make the deal at all, the group would have probably been all dead. As far as we know, the RV was only recently fixed, and the bandit attacks were escalating. Imagine if the attack happened and the group didn't have their escape vehicle ready. Everybody would have died. Never mind the fact that he's also a victim. He's a teenager who thought his friend was being held hostage by bandits. Clementine falls for something similar later down the line, and I don't blame her for all the harm that happened afterwards either, because they're both victims. Don't get me wrong, Ben does have some boneheaded mistakes later, like absolute stinkers. But in my opinion, he protected the group more than he harmed them by doing this. But with that out of the way, Lee takes a map from the engine room and brings it to Clementine, where they can finally hash out a more thorough plan of finding a boat and hopefully finding her parents. Moments after though, the group runs into yet another wrinkle. A large tanker hanging off of an overpass blocks the path ahead. Seeing as it's carrying very flammable fuel, we'll have to figure out how to get it out of the way manually. But as a genuinely nice change of pace, we do get to meet a couple more friendly people, Krista and Omid.
Yo, You keep screaming like that and you're gonna get your face chewed off.
Are you guys gonna be trouble? Because we could have just kept walking.
Define trouble.
Anything that gets you killed, or worse. And it tends to come hand in hand with groups of guys in distress.
Let's give these guys a break.
We'll see.
Honestly, for how late into the game they show up, I really do enjoy the two as much of the rest of the cast. I know the dynamic of serious girl and funny guy is pretty played out even back in 2012, but I'm not really gonna argue against a little bit of levity at this point.
How have you two made it this far? You seem dangerously normal.
Krista doesn't let us join groups, and I'm a fucking scrapper.
I got the feeling she takes care of you.
Please. I've saved her ass hundreds, tens, sometimes.
After getting acquainted with the two, we all decided it wouldn't be a bad idea to form up as a team. Lee and Clementine then go about finding a way to cut the tanker down. Luckily for them, there just happens to be an industrial-grade blowtorch in the station nearby. The two retrieve it after a minor walk-in with some walkers. I actually really like the fact that Clementine ended up being too scared to shoot her gun. She might understand the mechanics of firing a weapon, but applying that on a walker is a different task entirely. But with the blowtorch in hand, we start cutting the tanker down with some help from Omid.
Here, the weak portion of the coupling's out of my reach.
You think it'll be within mine?
No, but I'm gonna dangle you over that ledge.
The hell you are? God, you're a real son of a bitch, aren't you?
Shut up and start cutting.
Fun fact about trains, they're really loud. Fun fact about walkers, they're really sensitive to noise. A horde appears in the near thousands just as Lee and Omid cut the tanker down. To make things even worse, the ladder on the bridge gets clipped by the tanker, so the two are forced to jump on the train. Unfortunately, Omid does get his leg injured on the landing. For some really weird reason though, Telltale never revealed whoever pushed him off of the overpass. It's a pretty big plot hole that nobody ever addresses. But with Krista's help, we do manage to get on the train and sunset on out of there. The episode then comes to a close as Kenny and Lee discuss what to do once they arrive at the city. Their conversation, however, gets interrupted by Clementine's radio. Her broken radio.
Can't wait for you to get to Savannah, Clementine. I got your parents right here. And you be sure to find me, whether Lee wants you to or not. Now, what I need...
Holy shit.
Episode 4 begins in the streets of Savannah. There's a quiet, almost suffocating tension at the thought of a stranger having spoken with Clementine for God knows how long. As an older brother, the thought of something like this terrifies me to my core. Dealing with a potential stalker is bad enough, but dealing with it in the middle of the apocalypse? That's just terrifying. As the group is trying to get to the harbor, the bell from a nearby church starts ringing loudly and it brings in a bunch of walkers. At the same time, Clementine's radio springs to life and actually warns us to find safety. While everyone's trying to make sense of what's going on, the encroaching walkers forces them to stand their ground and fight for their lives. In the middle of the chaos, Clementine and Ben get cornered by walkers and Ben decides that the best thing to do is to leave her behind and run away. Yeah, I would have wrung his neck at this point, I'm gonna be honest. Chuck ends up saving her at the very last second, but he's left behind as the group squirrels away behind a nearby house. For obvious reasons, Krista is upset about the radio as she was led to believe it was broken in the last episode. But getting an explanation from Clementine will have to come later as the group needs to figure out how to get inside the building. Omid's completely unavoidable leg injury is getting worse and walking around isn't an option for him right now. While the door is locked, it does have an electric doggy door. Great, we just need to find the collar to activate it. Okay, where's the dog? Why is there a makeshift grave here? Oh. Realizing what needs to be done, Lee picks up a shovel and gets to digging. And I'm gonna tell you right now, this is just the entire episode. It's sadness, it's rot, it's the sickness that takes root inside you that feels impossible to remove. It's depression distilled. When people realize that they can't bargain their way out of loss, they realize just how real and unavoidable it is. That desperation then becomes a profound sadness, and a lot of people end up withdrawing from the world, often ignoring everything and everyone so they can wallow in it. How do the survivors face this? Well, that remains to be seen. With the collar in hand, the doors open with Clementine's help. Getting into the building, the group starts clearing the house. During that time, we do get to ask Clementine about the man on the radio. She explains that she's a friend who just wants to help her find her parents. Before we get anything else out of her though, Ben shouts for help. Kenny has withdrawn into the attic and refuses to explain why. Once we climb up, we see something utterly harrowing. We find a child who's died from starvation. He's completely emaciated, his bones practically visible through his skin. It's even more gut-wrenching with all the foreshadowing that was shown downstairs. A child's drawing of their dog, a cleaned-out fridge, and even an empty bag of dog food. The kid was starving and he'd completely run out of options. Kenny is completely paralyzed. Keep this in mind, his own son had just died hours ago, and now this phantom is staring at him right in the eyes. He wants to be strong enough to lay the kid to rest, but his own body is refusing to move at all. As his friend though, we encourage him the best we can. He needs this closure. He knows it just as much as we do.
Here, this'll make it clean and quick.
I don't know that I can do it, Lee.
I know that you can.
I couldn't even help my own boy.
That was your own flesh and blood. No father could have done that. But you can help this boy. Do what's right for him. Send him on his way.
We then bury the child with his dog, hoping that it brings him some kind of peace.
Hey! Hey! Who are you? What the hell do you want from us?
Lee, what's going on?
I saw someone standing there by the fence, watching us.
A walker?
No, too fast. Took off like a bat out of hell when I spotted him.
Was it a man or a woman?
Didn't get a good enough look.
What does it matter?
I'm wondering if it's the same guy who's been following us. The guy on the radio.
This isn't going to be the last time we have a run-in with a stranger, but for now, we have other priorities to set straight. Finding a boat and fixing Omid's leg. To do the former, Kenny and Lee decide to head on to the harbor while the others stay in the house to take care of Omid. On the way there, some bells start ringing again, which moves the dead around once more. Fortunately, the bells seem to be bringing them somewhere else entirely. For now, Lee and Kenny have a straight path to the docks. Once there though, it's apparent that the boat plan is completely foobar. The only boat that's even in the docks is entirely wrecked, but Kenny is just far too invested in the plan to see otherwise, so he decides to try his best to see if he can fix it while Lee scopes the place out. The first thing he finds is a massive pile of walkers stuck on pikes, something we'll learn more about later. Then he finds one of those coin-operated telescope things and uses it to look around. Side note, I'm surprised this one actually works. Seriously, every time I find one of these, someone else already fucking broke it. Nevertheless, Lee does spot something interesting. A person climbing down a nearby building. Figuring that this must be the bell ringer, the two sneak up on them and Lee puts the fucking smackdown on him. Like, seriously, that punch had some attitude behind it, Jesus! Clementine then shows up in the middle of the fight, which makes a mysterious figure finally relent. They take off their masks and introduce themselves as,
Blah, blah, blah. Proper name, place name, backstory stuff.
Is the special.
She introduces herself as Molly, a survivor who's been using the bell towers to herd the undead away from her scavenging locations. She realizes that we're not part of Crawford when she sees we're walking around with a kid. What's Crawford, you may ask? They're just a group of ultra-survivalists who don't take kindly to the weak, the elderly, and children. What do they do with them? Well, you've already seen the pikes. When we tell her that we're looking for a boat, she quickly explains that we're shit out of luck. The boat's either already left or they've been taken by Crawford to be stripped for parts. Some nearby walkers then emerge due to a little bit of gunfire that happened while fighting Molly. They're then forced into a nearby alleyway. While everyone else manages to climb up a fire escape, Lee has to scramble into the sewers using Molly's axe pick. Underground, he wanders around trying to find his way back to the house. At some point, he stumbles across Chuck's body. No good deed truly goes unpunished in the apocalypse. Lee then stumbles onto an opening that leads him to some kind of basement filled with a bunch of supplies. Stepping through a nearby door reveals another group of survivors, with one of them holding us up at gunpoint. Vernon, a trained physician and resident old man, is clearly scared but seems reasonable enough to talk to. Bree, the woman behind him, wants nothing to do with us. Fun fact about her, her model is actually based on a real-life person. Telltale ran a contest with people who pre-ordered the game. The grand prize winner, well, she ended up being Bree. The runner-ups ended up as walkers who will get a chance to slay later in the game. Unfortunately, this is about the only thing interesting about her character. But by being reasonable enough ourselves, Lee manages to disarm Vernon and explain his situation. The group themselves explain that they, much like Molly, used to be a part of Crawford. They're all cancer survivors who by all means are fine and healthy. Crawford really didn't see it this way though, so they were forced to flee and ultimately ended up bunkering here. After an understanding is reached, Lee asks for help getting back to the house, mentioning that he needs to get back to Clementine. Moved by this, Vernon volunteers to serve as a guide since he knows the sewers like the back of his hand. We arrive at the house not long after. As soon as we do, we run into Molly, who explains she got Kenny and Clementine back safely. We give her back her pick before finding Krista. She says Omid's only gotten worse since we left. Luckily, with Vernon around, he can take a look at his leg while we search the house for Clementine. Instead of finding her though, we see that Kenny's gotten completely drunk off of a bottle of wine he found. I can't completely blame Kenny for wanting some kind of reprieve. The man feels like he's got nothing else to give right now, but that is exactly why it's important for him to reach out to friends rather than giving in to vices. Coping mechanisms are useful, sure, everyone needs them in some way, shape, or form, but healthy ones should help you adapt to the stresses of the new norm rather than just reject their existence entirely. Short-term relief rarely gives you long-term stability. Far too often, you end up sinking even deeper into the depression until it's finally too late. Unfortunately, Lee just doesn't have the time nor the headspace to help Kenny right now. We still need to find Clementine, and he's not exactly in the mood to be helpful. That's when Ben says he last saw her in the backyard. We then run out to the back looking for her all over when we hear a noise from the shed. Swinging it open, we finally find Clementine. The relief comes in with the first good news we've had in a long time too. Turns out, there was a boat in the shed the entire time. It is mighty convenient that it was here, but god damn it, I'll take it. A few hours then go by as Kenny and Ben look over the state of the boat. Bad news? The boat's out of gas and needs a battery. Good news? Other than that, it's in pristine condition. But seeing the entire city's been completely stripped of anything useful, there's only one place to turn to: Crawford. While Vernon is initially panicked at the suggestion, he knows his people needs the medicine that Crawford's been hoarding, so he actually volunteers to join. Everyone else is already in agreement that they need to do this. Everybody, including Clementine, who believes that her parents must be in Crawford. Yeah, I am deciding to bring her with us. Let's face it, Omid could turn at any second. Between that and the strangers still on the loose, there is no way I'm letting her out of my sight. When night falls, Kenny takes us aside to inform us of something important. The boat can only carry 5 people. Even if nobody dies tonight, someone's still gonna get abandoned. Vernon then returns with Bree! Woo, yeah, Bree! But with everyone ready, we all duck into the sewers and head straight for Crawford. Once we arrive though, we find ourselves with a little bit of a surprise. Turns out, the ultra survivalist group got wiped out by something, and they're all turned into walkers. It just goes to show how fragile these hyper-violent societies can be when shit really hits the fan. But realizing this makes sneaking around much easier, the group pushes forward with the plan. From here, they split up so they can search for the supplies. Lee and Molly are tasked to find a battery, Kenny and Bree head to get some gas, and finally, Vernon and Krista search for medicine. Clementine and Ben stay in one of the classrooms that lead into the armory, keeping a watch and seeing if they can get into the storeroom. The process of getting the battery isn't too eventful. However, there's one walker that Molly absolutely lays into. It's the kind of beatdown that just screams a personal vendetta against the man specifically. This'll be important later. Finding their way inside, Lee and Molly get cornered by walkers and end up needing to climb up the rooftop with a battery they found inside one of the cars. As Lee makes his way back, Molly takes off saying she needs to run an errand, keeping the battery with her just in case the group decides to ditch her, which, fair enough. Anyway, Kenny and Bree burst in through some doors with the gas in tow. A herd of walkers are right on their ass, so we end up needing to bar the door with a hand axe. Now, I need you guys to pay attention to this. There is a herd of walkers trying to burst down the door. They really want to get inside, and they have no reason to leave. Got that seared into your brain? Good. After bringing the gas to the main classroom, Lee checks in on Krista and Vernon, and now there's another group of walkers inside? Hello? Where did these chuckle nuts come from? We blocked off the main entrance, but these dudes just teleported inside? This is not going to be the only case of magical teleporting walkers this episode. Trust me, it annoys me a lot. Disposing of the walkers, Lee heads inside to see how Krista and Vernon are doing. Thankfully, neither of them got bit, but they've run into a bit of a snag with the medicine. They are there, but the issue is that they're behind a coded lock. However, there is a tape recorder alongside a videotape nearby. Looking at the video shows us the same man Molly attacked having a conversation with a woman. It appears that she's pregnant, and the rules of Crawford state that the fetus needs to be terminated. This is an absolutely horrifying sentiment when it's forced on a mother who wants to keep her child. The man then gives her an ultimatum: undergo the procedure or leave Crawford. The tape then ends. It's a small but horrifying window into how awful Crawford really is. Realizing that the man's body might have more clues regarding the lock, Lee sets out into the alleyway once again. He finds and properly puts him down before rifling through his pockets. Inside, he finds a piece of paper with a code and another tape. Once we return, we can use the code to open one of the lockers where we find a third tape. We then go back to the nurse's office to get a full picture. The second tape reveals that the woman has indeed returned for the procedure. Without any warning though, she suddenly stabs the doctor before fleeing with his keys and his gun. We then hear screaming and gunshots in the background. Looks like we know how Crawford went to hell. Fortunately, we also managed to spot the doctor inputting the code to the lock, letting us access the medicine ourselves. Kristen and Vernon then return to the others while we check out the third tape. We catch the aftermath of Molly and the doctor having relations. He makes it quite clear that this is the last time the two would be having this exchange. This enrages Molly, who exclaims that her sister needs medicine. Otherwise, her symptoms will worsen and Crawford will deal with her like they dealt with all the others. But the man rejects her, saying that he can't risk getting caught. With that, she storms out of the room. This is a chilling revelation that only gets more heartbreaking once we run into her in the hallway. We notice that she's got a photo in her hand, and once we press her on why she's taken it, she explains that it's a photo of her sister. The medicine she's had to sell her own body for was for her sister's diabetes. Once that was deprived from her, she ended up being killed by the people in charge. That's why Molly left Crawford, and it's why she's been going at it alone. But then the school's bells start ringing, and that's our cue to get out of this hell on earth. But on the way there, we get jump scared by Ben, who thought we were walkers. In his hand is a very familiar looking axe, and okay, alright. I understand what Telltale was trying to do here. They wanted Ben to make this massive fuck up that leads to a bunch of shit, including Bree getting killed. Spoilers, by the way, Bree dies in a few minutes. But, there is no earthly reason for Ben to have done this. First of all, why wouldn't Kenny and Bree explain that the door to the main hall is being barred off because there's a bunch of walkers trying to get in? You'd think that would be the first thing that explained to the others? Second of all, where did the walkers go? Are these the same teleporting walkers that trapped Krista and Vernon in the nurse's office? There's just no explanation why the walkers would just disappear like that. I'm sorry, this has just bothered me for years in the exact same way Lee's fucking water drinking habits has. Dear God. Regardless, the walkers burst into the hallway and Molly's nearly killed. Luckily, Clementine's a goddamn crackshot and takes down one of the walkers. The group is then forced into the classroom as they try to break through the armory. Kenny manages to kick the door down, and this is when Ben decides that he wants to be honest about what happened at the motel, and man, again, I get it. Ben's entire character is someone who is completely out of his depth trying to do the right thing and fucking it up every time. Good intentions can only take you so far. It is the execution that is just as important, if not more so. But ironically, Telltale's execution on trying to make this point leaves a little to be desired. Ben is incompetent and he does need guidance, yes, but does anyone ever actually give him any? Rather than actually teach him anything, all we see is the group heaping responsibilities on him while treating him like a liability. And again, the teleporting walkers do not help. The way it reads right now, it's like the universe itself is bending around to make this drama happen, and drama for the sake of drama is really annoying. Needless to say, the revelation sends Kenny into a rage, and since people are being honest, he makes it known that the boat's capacity means we're gonna have to vote to leave at least one person behind. His suggestion? Ben. And while the group initially leans towards agreeing with him, Clementine disagrees, and it's enough to get everyone to table the topic for now. Everyone piles into the armory, but unfortunately there's only a few rounds to get everyone filled up, plus a shotgun that Lee grabs. They retreat up the stairs, blasting walkers all the way, and escape out one of the windows. At the last second, however, Ben gets grabbed by the walker who's hanging from the school bell. For those who paid attention to the background, this walker is actually the leader of Crawford himself. The leader of the so-called Ultimate Survivor group went out like a fucking bitch. At the last second, Lee manages to grab Ben's hand and we're now left with a choice. Pull him up or let him fall. At this point, Ben's failures are more of a reflection of how the group has completely failed to help him. To kill him here is just taking the easy way out, so I decide to save his life, even if Kenny silently disapproves of it. So the group manages to get back to the house just in time to get Omida's medicine. Vernon then takes us aside to have an important talk. We first apologize for what happened to Bree, but Vernon insists there was nothing we could do about it. Actually, he's more concerned over the fact that he's not as sad about her passing as he thinks he should be. Oftentimes, people end up getting numb to their emotions if they've been exposed to trauma over a long period of time. It goes to show just how much pain Vernon's been through since all of this has become so pedestrian. But that's not why he pulled us aside. He asks Lee if he thinks the boat plan is actually any good for Clementine. Really, beyond getting vaguely away from the current danger, the group doesn't really have any idea where they're actually going and what they're going to do when they get there. Lee has a real point here. He mentions this because he offers to take care of Clementine in Lee's stead. Vernon's group has a few people who have had children, including himself. With Crawford gone, they can just lay low and survive off of the supplies they've already gathered. But even if it is a good offer, we tell Vernon that we'll need time to mull things over, which he seems to be fine with. And as he leaves, we also catch Molly heading down the stairs. Asking where she's going, she explains that she's leaving. As fine as it has been to be with a group, she just can't see herself sticking around people for too long. It's a sad farewell, but she wishes us luck all the same before leaving. This isn't a fake out, mind you. This is really the last time we see her. And as much as it breaks my heart, this does make sense. Molly's pain still runs pretty deep, and if she survived this long on her own, she can keep going at it just fine. But with that, we finally get a chance alone with Clementine. She expresses her concern about her parents still being missing. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that they died a long time ago. The voice message Clementine's mother left at their home was already pretty grim in and of itself. More than anything else right now, Clementine deserves our honesty. We tell her that we should give up on the search and focus on our own survival. She's utterly heartbroken by this. Not just at the idea that her parents are gone, but that Lee, him of all people, is insisting that they should move on from it. We decide to give her some space, eventually drifting off to sleep. After some time later, Lee wakes up with Clementine nowhere in sight. Running outside, he hears her radio crackling and finds it next to some trash bins.
No.
Fuck. Lee? Lee? You out here? Lee!
Now we could conceal the bite from the others, but I just don't see Lee hiding anything from them at this point. We show them the wound and tell them that somebody's taken Clementine. Our main suspect at this point is Vernon. He was being insistent on taking her, so that does make some amount of sense. At this point, we can ask the group if they'd be willing to help us save her. Whoever stays or go heavily depends on your choices in the game. For my playthrough, everyone decided to pitch in to save Clementine, even Ben. So, we all take to the sewers to find Vernon, only to find out that the group has disappeared from their bunker. The radio then crackles to life one more time.
Clementine, are you all right? Where are you? Vernon, you son of a bitch!
Hello, Lee?
Who is this?
It's not Vernon, if that's what you're thinking. And you should really watch your tone. Clementine's fine, but if I were you, I'd choose my next words very carefully.
Episode 5 begins with an entire ocean of walkers flooding the streets of the city. Remember that fun fact about trains? Yeah, I sure do. It doesn't really matter what we say to the stranger, he just cuts us off before we learn anything meaningful. As much as we want to try to find Clementine, we have other problems to deal with right now. The deluge of walkers have gotten so out of hand that they've even gone into the sewers, blocking the way back to the house entirely. While Lee is resourceful enough to use a rib spreader to open the elevator nearby, he suddenly gets really dizzy and loses consciousness. He wakes up to find that the group is preparing to cut his arm off. I'm gonna spare you guys the image of watching the whole scene play out, but I do want to point something out that I find really funny. Telltale just has this laser-focused fixation on their main characters getting their arm fucked up. I mean, really, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd have a fistful of nickels, and that's a lot of nickels. But now that Lee's arm has been taken off, the best we can do at this point is hope that it did the trick or that it'll give him more time to find Clementine. We open up the doors and start climbing up the hatch, and good lord, Lee really is built differently if he can already do this right after his arm got amputated. Climbing all the way to the rooftop, the group can finally see just how screwed everything is. There is not an inch of the city that isn't crawling with the undead at this point. But with Lee's quick thinking, the group does manage to find a way back by using the nearby bell as a distraction. Shout out to Molly. Arriving at the house, the group is shocked to find that the boat's been taken. They're one way out. Gone. Just like that. Checking around, Omid then finds a note on the ground. Vernon and his group snuck in after we left and robbed us blind. For all of his talk about being the better option for Clementine, he does a pretty scummy thing by leaving her to die along with the entire group. With tensions running wild, Kenny and Ben then start arguing with each other.
Where the hell do you get off?
I'm just saying we should all chill. Not just you.
Chill? Lee's bitten and God knows how long he has left. Clementine is who the fuck knows, and we're robbed of the only hope we've had.
So?
So Lee should have left your ass in Crawford. We got enough problems.
Fuck you, Kenny! I am so sorry about Katja and Duck. I am! And I know I fucked up. But stop pushing me around and stop wishing I was dead! No! You know how they die. You've said goodbye. I never got to see my family, my parents, my little sister. Do you get that? Your family is gone, but at least you had them to lose. I never made it home. They could be alive, or dead, or walkers, or worse, and I don't know! So give me a fucking break!
And while I am glad that Ben finally stands up for himself, the writers didn't go about this very well. It was a mistake to have Ben defend himself by saying that he never got to see his family. To me, trying to one-up someone suffering with your own just minimizes the pain that the other person is feeling, and it is especially weird when he is part of the reason why Kenny's family died. Instead, I think Telltale could have explored a pretty strong parallel between Kenny and Ben. Both of them have caused harm to people in the group because they thought they were doing the right thing. Both of them have had moments where they abandoned someone out of sheer fear, and they both hate themselves for it. It's pretty clear that much of Kenny's anger at Ben is him projecting his own self-hatred onto the kid. Acknowledging this could have been a pretty good source of growth for both characters. Regardless, walkers then begin attacking the house and the group is forced all the way to the attic. At this point, Lee starts feeling dizzy again, and that's when the radio starts buzzing once again. This time it's Clementine on the other side, and she tells everyone that she's at the hotel where her parents were staying. As good as that is to know, Kenny then brings up an awful but sobering thought. Lee doesn't have much time left. If somebody else ends up getting bit here, things are going to spiral out of control completely. But with emotions running high, Lee then picks up a nearby bus and throws it smack dab against a nearby wall. It's enough to leave a hole in it, and the group realizes that they might be able to break into the house next door by smashing right through. With the downtime that they now have while working on the wall, Lee has a chance to talk about what they'll do once Clementine is safe. At this point, he has to accept that turning into a walker is a very real possibility, and he tells everyone that he wants him to take care of her if that were to happen. Krista is initially resistant to the idea. Not because she doesn't want to be there for Clem, but because she thinks Lee can still make it. Trying to plan around someone passing away is a very sad feeling, but it is a reminder to cherish what little time that person has left. If you ask me, I truly believe that the most important thing in life is the connections we make with other people. It's those exact connections that celebrate you in every success, who who lift you up at every failure and will be there with you to the very end. So, enjoy all the time you have left with them before the only thing you have are the memories they leave behind. But there's also another really important detail in this sequence. Kenny finds a bottle of wine and decides to share it with Krista and Lee. Krista initially pauses before chugging the alcohol down. You can then see the gears turning in Kenny's head until he realizes Krista's pregnant. There's actually been a few clues about it since her introduction with Omid. She reacts very positively to the group having Clementine around in the first place. She vomited at the sight of the dead dog, and even the way she reacted to Crawford's policies. They seem pretty innocuous at the moment, but putting everything together paints the picture pretty clearly. The fact that Kenny, the only parent in the room, manages to clock this is a pretty cool detail. This is the kind of writing from Telltale that I really enjoy, and it's why I keep coming back to them time and time again despite my grievances here and there. But with Omid finally getting through the wall, the group clambers through and find themselves in another house. Searching around, they find a dead couple with one of them holding a gun in his hand. The implications are pretty clear here. You can see here how fresh Kenny's wounds really are with Katja's death. This here is the reality of what happens when people take their own lives. They're not just hurting themselves, they're completely changing the lives of the people that were around them. The group then keeps pushing forward, climbing onto the fire escape and leaping to a nearby building.
Ben!
Kenny and Lee then rush to Ben's aid only to realize that he got impaled when he landed. At this point, it's pretty clear that there's nothing they can do to save him. Just trying to move him causes immeasurable pain, and it starts catching the attention of walkers nearby. Wanting to do one last act of kindness for Ben, Kenny then makes a decision.
Get the fuck out of here.
What?
Go back! She needs you, Lee.
Kenny!
This is not a discussion!
Hell no, man! I'm not leaving!
What did I just say?
Let's get Ben and get out of here! What the fuck, Kenny?
Lee, it's okay.
Katja wouldn't want this. Damn it, Ken!
Yeah, she would. I either save the kid or I get to see her. Either way. Now get back up there.
I'm very conflicted about this. I do find it admirable that Kenny made the choice to end Ben's suffering, poetic even, but the game really wants to make it a point that he does not approve of people throwing their lives away. He could have very easily done what he did for Ben and then climbed up the ladder with Lee. It's a really bizarre writing decision, to be honest. Afterwards though, we do see the weight of everything on Lee's shoulders. It's the closest we get to see him actually cry, and it's a real tragedy I've seen in too many people. But sadly, we see him swallow everything one more time before we head to the hotel. Getting close to the building, the group is forced to clamber over a rickety sign. With Lee deteriorating, he decides it's best for him to go ahead first. After all, he's the one going out anyway. Might as well make sure the path is safe. His weight then causes the sign to break, and with that, he finally decides,
fuck it. I'm going for it!
Going for it? What does that mean?
It means I'm already bitten. I just have to push my way through.
What the fuck? But maybe you got to it fast enough. Maybe you'll be fine.
I can't risk losing more time on a long shot.
And with that, Lee goes on an absolute tear, cutting down walkers left, right, and center. And you might notice that some of the walkers here are oddly more detailed and rendered than the others. Those guys are actually the contest winners that I mentioned earlier. They're based on real people. Reaching the motel, we then see a very familiar car. Heading inside, we find our way into one of the rooms. It's here where we're held up at gunpoint by the stranger and forced to disarm ourselves. He then makes us sit with him and we start talking.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, I know who you are.
You saw my car. Out front, then. You see anything else you want in there? Not a whole lot left.
Everything was just out there for the taking. We were starving.
For the taking? Do you know what you took from me?
The stranger then reveals that he was a husband and a father of two. A few months into the apocalypse, he took his son out to hunt for food and he got lost while doing so. It was actually in their search that our group ransacked their car and left them with nothing. The hoodie that Clementine is wearing, that belonged to his son. His wife blamed him both for their missing son and their stolen supplies. She then ran away with their daughter in the middle of the night. A day later, he found their zombified remains. Afterwards, he shows us how he's been stalking the group the entire time. Turns out, he had his own radio that happened to have come across Clementine's frequency. Initially, he just wanted to get revenge, but he quickly changed his mind upon learning the choices Lee's been making.
I'm not like you. You walked a little girl into a dairy full of sick people and let them get their hands on her.
I was trying to find someplace safe for her.
You abandoned a defenseless, grieving woman.
You weren't there.
The sweatshirt she's wearing was my boy's. You stole that from us.
We were starving. It was cold.
So my family starved in the cold!
The stranger is very clearly an idea that Telltale is putting forth. He's a stark reminder that for every decision that we make, consequences we could never even dream of can ripple out to completely innocent people. In this day and age, our possible connections with people have grown wider than ever before. With that grows the ability for people to harm individuals even if they don't mean it. What seems like a funny joke to you could be hundreds or thousands in a wave of hatred a person has already experienced. With that kind of danger in mind, is it really any wonder why we're so closed off these days? I'm not saying the people who do this are monsters, but I do think it's important to be careful about what you put out into the world. Just that little bit of mindfulness to be good to your fellow people can do so much. I think the world could use a little bit of that, especially right now. But he isn't just a victim of our actions, he's a monster born out of his own grief. A very damaging part of grief is how much it keeps you stuck in the past. It's like being tied down by an immovable weight that prevents you from living your life in the here and now. Think of the St. Johns who longed for a time before the apocalypse so much that they committed atrocities. Think of Lily who couldn't move past her paranoia because of her father's death. Think of Kenny who ignored everyone's safety so he could pretend his son was okay. The stranger is the ultimate culmination of what happens when you ignore that grief. It is to live in a reality where you justify your bad decisions at every turn, where hurting others becomes second nature. Most importantly, it's a reality that anybody could find themselves in if they allow themselves to. It is then that he starts talking to the bag that he set down in front of him, almost lovingly. It's actually his wife's decapitated head. The man has gone completely delusional at this point. This is the moment Clementine manages to sneak into the room. With our help, she arms herself with our cleaver and starts creeping closer.
I miss you so much, Tess. You're gonna like Clementine a lot, though. She's not Lizzie, but she's sweet. She wouldn't hurt a fly.
Fighting with the stranger, Lee's just too disadvantaged by his amputation. He ends up getting on top of us, nearly choking us to death until... Finally reuniting, Lee and Clementine share an embrace and she notices his missing arm. Prioritizing her safety, we'll tell her that we'll explain things later as a walker comes into the room. It doesn't react to Lee's presence at all, giving him ample time to kill it. The both of them then realize that the amount of walker blood that's gone onto Lee has practically camouflaged him. While she hates it, we cover her in the muck and start sneaking through the horde. A simple enough task, but Clementine then freezes partway through. She sees her parents, both of them having turned into walkers. Lee weakly calls out to her, but he passes out right then and there. We then wake up to find out that Clementine's locked us in a nearby store. Lee is barely hanging on at this point. If we don't find a way for her to escape, we might end up killing her ourselves. But with our bodies so weak, we're just unable to open the shutters. We then decide to be honest with Clementine.
Clementine, honey, my arm is gone because I cut it off.
Why would you do that?
Because I was bitten, Clem.
Please, no. No. That's not true.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, Clementine. I'm supposed to take care of you. I can't now.
I know.
We then start struggling to get out the back, with Lee collapsing against the wall and losing his strength entirely. This is it. This is as far as he can go. The following sequence is Lee doing his best to guide her through, showing her how to look around for any useful items and even managing to kill a walker with a baseball bat. With a key to the back and a gun in her hands, we talk with her one last time.
Hey. You're strong, Clem. You can do anything.
But I'm little.
Doesn't mean nothing. You go see bad stuff, but it's okay.
My parents. It's so horrible.
I can't imagine, sweetie.
And now, you. Please. Please don't be one of them. Please don't become a walker.
There's only one thing you can do. You know that.
I don't know if I can.
You have to shoot me, honey.
Lee, no.
It's okay. It's okay. Megan, first days we met. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
When I went out to rescue that boy, Glenn, we met a girl. She'd been bitten too. All she wanted was to not come back as a walker.
Lee?
And I remember how hard it was to do that. But I'm glad I did. You don't want to see me like one of them.
Okay, Lee. I can do it. I can.
Find Omid and Krista. They're outside of town, by the train. You remember how to get back there?
Yes.
Good. They'll take good care of you. And Clem. Keep that hair short.
I will. I'll cut it myself.
Great. Good. And also...
What is it?
No, don't worry. All right. I'll miss you.
Me too.
The Walking Dead is one of the most human games I have ever played. Yes, it does have faults and mistakes, but to me, it beautifully captures the flaws in ourselves that we struggle with every day. Our love, our joy, our sorrow, our anger, our grief. It is a grim reminder of what people can do when they lost everything, but it's also a hopeful mirror to how much we can accomplish despite having nothing. It also illustrates that while there are people who are willing to exploit and harm us, to put your trust in others is also how you can push past your own limitations. Yes, doing this is more difficult than it sounds, but even my own happiest days stemmed from making that gamble myself. At the end of the day, it's really that hope that keeps us going. The hope that the people we love care for us just as much as we do for them. The hope that no matter how bad things get, tomorrow can always be a better day. If we throw away that hope, we might as well be the Walking Dead.